Welcome to the fourth day of PogChamps 3. Today we have a marquee matchup in Group B, and we'll primarily be focusing on Daniel Negreanu, one of the best poker players of all time, versus El Rubius. And we know Rubius from his matchup against XQC a couple of days ago. So, I did a little bit of pre-match preparation with Daniel Negreanu, and we mostly on his opening repertoire with the white pieces. And Rubius starts the game with e4, and Daniel plays c5. So Daniel is a Sicilian player. My co-commentator for the day, Anna Rudolph, actually prepared Rubius for c3. If any of you need a very simple weapon against the Sicilian defense, the Alpine Sicilian is very good. Black has to be ready for white expanding naturally into the center of the board with d4. The two best moves for black now are d5 immediately, which counterattacks here in the center. Yes, you bring out your queen, but white cannot naturally put the knight on c3 to attack your queen. And then black, plays knight c6, develops the bishop, long castle, kind of like a Scandinavian defense. The alternative is to go knight f6, which immediately attacks this pawn. It's a little bit weird because after pawn attacks knight, you sometimes have to put your knight in the center and even drop it back here in some variations, and the position is very complicated. Daniel plays d6 because Daniel either plays the Dragon Sicilian or the Najdorf Sicilian. The problem is that after this, black has what's known as the Najdorf setup, but white didn't play the Najdorf. In the Najdorf Sicilian, which we see a lot in the top level, we see d4, takes, and there's a knight there, not a pawn. And then this is the Najdorf Sicilian. Notice the difference. Black's setup is the same, but look at this setup. The knights are back. White has two central pawns on the bishop. White is a lot better here because white has a lot more space. And now what Daniel should do is he should develop in the center and castle quickly. Daniel plays b5 and focuses on queenside development, but the problem with that is he's not fast enough getting his king out of the center. Rubius plays rook e1. We get knight d7. At this point, believe it or not, white is already borderline winning. If white plays this position with a move like e5, just shredding open the center of the board. Look, take. The knight is under attack, right? If you move the knight to the middle, white plays e6. White negates the development of the rest of the pieces. And you would be thinking, well, I got to develop all my pieces. That's what I'm supposed to do. Some openings are so good so quickly that if the opponent does not take care of their king's safety, you can immediately attack with your pawns in the center of the board. You'll notice Rubius plays one of those natural developing moves, bishop to g5. So Daniel should have played e6, bishop e7. Daniel continues to develop the queen side, and it's not bad, but again, this is a good moment. You can kind of break on through. Rubius plays knight c3. I don't dislike that move at all. Rubius is just developing his pieces. But now here's the problem for Daniel. How does he develop here? Because the truth is, white is about to play e5. Well, Daniel, right on time, glues it all shut. Plays the move e5. If pawn takes, we're fine. So don't just take because you can. Got to evaluate whether it's good or not. So in this position, black needs two more moves to get settled. Rubius does not give black those two moves. He plays knight to d5. He's already attacking this. If the bishop arrives on e7, he's probably going to take it. And he's better here, slightly better positionally. But his advantage lies with the move a4, which is a really obscure move. You completely negate this whole rectangle and you play a4. Why? Because this is a target. If you take, I take with my queen, and your a6 pawn is gone. Just going to mow it right down. If you don't take, if you push, then I'm going to play the move a5. I'm going to isolate and split these pawns, and I'm going to round them up. I'm going to go after one of them somehow. That is way too meta at this level. Actually, frankly speaking, if I gave this position to a group of players, I think you would need to be at least 1800s to come up with the idea a4. I mean, maybe some folks watching are insulted. You're like, oh, I'm 1450, and I saw that. I don't know why you're British in this accent, but I don't know. I feel like they get offended a lot. I don't know. Anyway, so a4 is the best move here. But Rubius plays knight d5 for starters. Daniel Negreanu goes g5. Now bishop back and knight takes. And this is very scary for black. Because even though D-Negs gets that pawn, what's open? the e-file. 1, 2, 3, 4. But here, Rubius did not trust his instinct. He saw this. This move is winning for white. If you take and black takes back, knight takes. If the knight takes, you don't even take with the rook. You take with the bishop, attacking the rook, and this is still a problem. If the rook moves out of the way, bishop f6 is a check, and the queen is lost. There's nothing you can do. Bishop e7, I take, and you get steamrolled. And if you want, you also have bishop here. So you have to shred open the center. But Rubius didn't trust himself. And he moved his knight. He saw the bishop just arrived. He saw this, but you all have to ask, is there a threat? And if there is no threat, focus on yourself. It's good life advice. He goes here. And then he went back. He was like, damn it, I missed my opportunity. That's what happens. That's what happens. He's just taken, ripped open the center. But now, Daniel Negreanu is out. He's gone. His king is safe. So we get bishop takes. Now, bishop takes is a funny move. It's actually better to take with the knight. Why? Because bishop takes, you start looking at this. But you got to ask yourself a question. Who's guarding that? Rook, knight. If you're Daniel Negreanu, you got to look at your forcing moves first, capturing things. If you take, okay. Whoop. If you take and then take with the rook, okay. But you can also go here. This move attacks the queen and removes a guard of the bishop. And Daniel would have been winning. It would have been even worse because he would have found this hitting both of these pieces. So this is just totally winning. And again, this is protected. A little tactical insertion there. But he plays this, and now bishop comes back to d4 and rook e8. So we get rook e3, a rook lift, trade, and now potential expansion with e4. Very good position. And one thing that I told Anna right before this, actually, I said both sides have 3 pawns on each side and 2 pawns on each side. And I made a prediction that the game would be won and lost on this open rectangle. Because the truth is that white is a lot better here, primarily because of the pawns that have been pushed like this in front of black's king. I apologize. I just clicked that. All of these light squares are up for grabs. If you can team up a queen with this bishop, for example, bishop c2, queen d3, you are rocket shipping into h7. There is a lot of weaknesses there. Black has to go back and defend with knight f8. The knight could use d4 as a transfer point if the bishop moves and land on f5. f5 is known as an outpost square, a square in the enemy's territory where you cannot be kicked out, especially by pawns. You can lock in a piece there and it'll exert tremendous pressure on the position. I have a great Instagram carousel post. Follow GothamChess on Instagram for instructional chess content. So, and also pictures of flowers, which is my most recent post. So we get rook to e3, takes, knight c5. We get e4. So Rubius miscounts attackers and defenders, but Negreanu backs up. He didn't catch the bluff. Now queen e2, knight takes, queen takes. All right, who is better and why? Well, in this case, it is now black who is better because black has the 2 bishops. The bishop is gone, but this light squared bishop controls all of the entrance points and stares down this way. Also, white has an isolated pawn in the center of the board. So Daniel plays rook c6, which is a great move. I love it. He wants to put his queen behind the rook, maybe infiltrate, and maybe bring the rook up to pressure like this. We get the move queen to e3. Daniel plays queen c8, the move e5. So Rubius finding beautiful entrance points. Again, Daniel Negreanu not just snap taking. If you snap take, then bishop takes, and I get to the defender of your king. And then if you snap take, look at this. Why would you allow this? So Daniel plays rook e6, utilizing the earlier rook lift to pin the pawn to the queen. We get h4. Oh my god, this move is nuts. Completely nuts. He's opening up a line of attack. Again, don't just snap take. You double your pawns, you open the g-file. Daniel plays pawn takes to the middle, attacking the bishop. We get rook to c1, danger levels, not moving the bishop, counter-attacking the queen, protected. The queen slides over, and in this position, Rubius played the move bishop to b6. But he has the time to find it. He's been avoiding a lot of trades.
Yeah. No, this is his chance. This is his chance to calmly calculate that that bishop is attacked by 2.
Oh, and he misses it! So we were waiting for Daniel to see queen takes, but he plays the move queen to b8. And at this point, a lot of crazy stuff ended up happening. We got h takes g5, and Daniel went and found it. He was like, oh, you know, because he moved his queen to attack the bishop, but he completely forgot it had a layer of defense. He spots it. And then here we get queen takes, rook takes, and knight takes e5, and just total pandemonium. Take a look.
He missed the bishop hanging.
No!
He takes on a5 too, which unfortunately is another piece, and Daniel will take it. That game by both. Kudos to both.
missed it!
Oh, Daniel didn't take the knight, so Rubius is still in the game. It's a piece down, but he still has some chance.
So of course, Daniel misses that he could play bishop takes, and he plays pawn takes pawn, and now it's Rubius's chance. Rook to c8 check. It's rook c8 and king h7 and knight f7. If Daniel had blocked, thinking to hang on, knight d7 comes in, hitting the rook and the bishop, and it is far, far, far from over. So Rubius is back into the game, but black is still doing a lot better here. Why? Because of the knight. It's the knight. It's stuck. It has no way out. Despite winning a bishop, it's stuck in a cage now. Daniel goes check, which is a great move. Always look for checks. If the king goes here, you walk into a fork. Whether he saw that or not, I don't want to know. I'm just going to assume he did because Daniel's a genius. But the king goes here. Now, rook h6 looks good, but the knight is covering. Daniel, look at this. King g6. Beautiful board awareness. In the middle of all this, not to bring your rook out of captivity. The knight's got nowhere to go. The knight has to go here. But here, king g7 locks the knight away forever. And then you can win it on the next move with rook h6. But Daniel brings the king forward. We get rook f8 check, and then he brings back the rook. I'm not a huge fan of this, but there is king takes. If his plan was to play king takes, he has my blessing. If his plan was to play bishop takes, then the knight gets out. Still winnable for black, but very tricky. He plays rook f6, rook d8, and look at this. Bishop takes b2. At this point, again, he can go check and take this with the knight, but he wanted to move his bishop out of the way, and then he spots it. He spots rook h6, king g2, and here I just want to show you how he finishes the game. He brings back the bishop, centralizes his king, advances the pawns on the queen side, picks up the pawn with the rook. Rook and bishop team up, and then he finds rook b2, offering the trade here to this rook. Of course, no trade, and, well, Rubius blundering here. Rubius had very low time throughout this stage of the game, but a nice comeback from Daniel. But for Daniel, this is a huge learning experience. This is one of those games that you win, you can't disregard, because Daniel was passive out of the gate. He needs a weapon against the Alpine Sicilian. Daniel has to learn d5 or else he will be in trouble in games moving forward. He has to learn this d5 idea or knight f6 or g6. Even g6 is an okay line against the Alpine, but there you guys go. d4 and a nice navigation from the opening. Rubius needed to trust himself in that one moment to take in the center of the board, and he did not. Let's take a look at the second game. Now, Daniel's got the white pieces. My preparation with Daniel was that Rubius was probably going to play d5. So first of all, step one is preparation. Rubius played d5 against XQC, and then he played knight f6. And what I told Daniel, literally, I got Twitter DMs to prove it, was to play knight f3, bishop e2, and short castle. Then put two pawns into the center, d4, c4. So in a perfect world, and that's actually straight from my openings course, link in the description. Check it out on the Gotham-chess.com. The whole point is that you get a position that looks like this. And you want d4, c4 in the center, and if black is not careful, you can really overrun them in the center very quickly. You can play like d5, for example. And you attack in the center just like last game because you're castled and they're not. But ladies and gentlemen, this game got hella weird, hella quickly. Because Rubius played the move f6. And what I showed Daniel here was that he should castle with d4. The problem is, I didn't know that Rubius was going to go f6. f6 prepares another pawn push, and you've got to think about that. How can my opponent build blocks of pawns in the center? Early, go move by move, don't pre-move the opening. Here, d4, and white is crushing. Because black is not going to get to go here. If black now turns to this, well, these pawns are weak, you go back to your game plan. The problem in this game is Daniel castled, and then even here, the best move for white is to go here, even though you're going to get taken, because you're castled. You're happy opening the center. The only move here for black is e4. Only move to keep the center closed, but then you can drop the knight back to d2, attacking this pawn. Black has to waste more time defending this. It's a nightmare. Then you can play c4 and advance, and you've got a big lead in development. Maybe you try to chip away at the center with the pawn. That is the best way to do this. Black is pushing too many pawns. But Daniel plays a bit passively, and Rubius escapes beautifully from the opening. And here, the best move for black is, of course, you're right, c5. Structural. You're playing on structure because you don't want white to advance their pawn. And then you will play knight c6, bishop e6, and black has a dominant clamp on the center of the board, and then we'll look to expand. Now here, Daniel Negreanu went wild. He channeled his inner AlphaZero, his inner modern day computer, and he played the move g4. Of course, it's still the best move in the position. The only move in this position that gives white any hope of an advantage, you gotta go d4. You gotta strike in the middle, because this will open up your position. The bishop will go to the diagonal. You'll improve your position in the middle of the board. Daniel plays g4. And then king g2, and his whole idea was to play rook h1, h4, and storm these pawns. The problem is that here, Rubius played the move c5, completely clamping down on the center, and when Daniel played rook h1, the problem is that his bishop is staring like this. What is the best move in this position, ladies and gentlemen, for the black pieces? Correct. A same-side pawn break, which kills white's chances, and that move is f5. El Rubius, 936, plays the move f5. Doesn't even matter that he's rated 936. What a great move. The point being, and here, you know what he said? He said, Negreanu wants me to take him. For example, he said, Negreanu wants this to open up my H file, to open up his H file. And he's right. And you know what Rubius wants? Rubius, well, and that's why Negreanu plays this, because he doesn't want to take, so he pushes. Rubius plays this move. He plays the move e4. He understands that he's got bishop and pawn guarding, and he's got the knight under attack. Negreanu doesn't like that this is opening and this is opening, so Negreanu backs up. And here, Rubius can take the pawn with a discovered attack. But he forgot about his bishop. He was calculating take. Negreanu here would go bishop f3. So it's actually funny. In this position, it's better for black not to move the pawn at all. Can you believe it? Keep the pawn there. Why? Why would you keep the tension when you can take a pawn with check? It allows white back into the game. These pawns are restricting the movement of white's pieces, and you have a time stop here to improve. This knight should go for this king. The move knight g6 activates the knight and the queen. It's very rare one move in chess can activate two pieces. The knight and the queen join the party. And then if Negreanu played h4 guarding this, it doesn't guard it at all, knight takes. Because this hits this and this. And if you try to hang on, I mean, I'm gonna pry you out, bishop c8, something, maybe e3, threaten to mate on g2. It's really bad news here. It's really bad news for white. Your king cannot be the primary defender of the rook, much like, okay, I'm not gonna make a Kyle Kuzma joke again. I made that in a previous video, and people were like, what about the Knicks? And I was like, haha, depression. So I'm not gonna make a Lakers joke. I apologize. But Rubius spent a while here and again did not trust his instincts. The poor man was so close. And he played the move f4, and now it all comes down because we get knight takes pawn and bishop f3, stabilizing the light squares. If I were to ask you here, who is the most important piece in white's position, you would say the bishop on f3, of course, because you watch my videos and you've gained hundreds of points while watching my videos. Well, not while, but you watch them, then you go play. Don't watch my videos while you play. That's cheating. The bishop on f3 is holding it all together. Now Rubius, he's back to playing Grandmaster chess. Negreanu's back to pushing the pawns over here. He's just looking to make. The problem is, two pawns aren't going to beat two pawns. This is a very important lesson. You're on the same side, and you don't have enough firepower here. You don't have enough materials to crash through. The thing is that if one of these pawns is pushed, black will just push the other pawn. So G, then H, then G, and it's gridlock. Okay? So now we get rook f5, we get g6, we get h6, everything that we accounted for, and Negreanu plays the move bishop to g4, attacking the rook. And here, Rubius again had a brilliant moment. Absolutely brilliant moment. I know this guy's going to be a good chess player. He doesn't just move the rook, he finds the move f3. You say, Levy, so what? He knows how to push a pawn. Yeah, as if you would have found the move f3. Don't lie to yourself. F3 is a counter-attacking measure, and just like a couple moves ago, there was this moment these pawns could have been restricting white's movement. When f3 lands as an in-between move using the concept of danger levels, a king is worth more than a rook, And then he played rook f4 and sadly lost it for the... But it's okay. This pawn is restricting restricting white's movement. If the rook just dropped back, black is dominating here. Absolutely dominating in this position. These pawns are great, but the rook covers, the knight covers. Now you're saying, how would black actually win this game? Let me just flip this. I did this yesterday. We're flipping this to black's perspective. As you have this pawn here, the question is, how do you get in? Here's how you get in. You're going to have to mobilize your knight and then ultimately bring in your queen. Either through h4, once you get rid of the rook, maybe drop the knight in here, or stockpile the pressure on the d file to this weak d3 pawn. You're going to have to remove one or two of these guards of the position with a trade, and then infiltrate on that side of the board. Because this side is severely open, especially since the pawns have advanced and you've got this brilliant clamp. The knight can get some extra reinforcement. Is the game over? Not yet. It's still a process. But let's flip it back. In the game, we got rook f4, and of course Negreanu took. But here, Daniel Negreanu, he gave Rubius the biggest chance. He played the move bishop to e6 and just blundered his bishop. Daniel, again, is really struggling here to come up with something because he's so restricted. The best move is maybe take this pawn, but then the knight takes, queen takes, this bishop is reactivated. This bishop maybe drops back somewhere or gets defended, but black is then going to bring the rook to the party. It's a mess, but Daniel plays bishop e6 and then doesn't know what to do, so he plays the move queen e1, and here Rubius just has queen takes pawn straight up, and he finds it in a move. He finds queen d3, he finds it. Now king to g1. At this point, the eval is -10. And here, ladies and gentlemen, absolute tragedy struck. He had about a minute on the clock, and he calculated the move knight to... First, he looked at bishop h2, and he's like, okay, I get taken. Then he's like, how do I get to e2? And he was arrowing the move knight here. Then he was arrowing the move knight bishop takes, and then he was arrowing this. And he was going to play bishop takes knight on e4, but he had clicked his queen previously, and the man played this. And the man lost his queen, and I felt so terrible, but still a learning experience. At this point, the man's got about a minute. Just go. By the time he hung his queen, he had about 10 seconds. So he kind of just froze up. He couldn't, you just gotta go. And I know this is coming from me, and when I compete, I'm always in time trouble, but he saw the best moves multiple times throughout this match. He just has to trust himself. He's just got to trust and build that first instinct. And even a moment later, Daniel just straight up gave him a rook. Daniel went here because he saw the low time. He's like, I just got to make a move. But Rubius didn't have enough time. And then this is how the game ended. I feel so bad.
But now the rook is hanging. Daniel is hanging his rook, but Rubius doesn't see it. He doesn't have time.
Oh, are we going to get queen e4, knight h4, queen a8 mate? Is Rubius going to see this? Oh, Rubius, no, Rubius! And so as you can see, we got bishop takes, which I predicted queen takes, and you're just too far away here. You're just too far away. At this point, you realize, oh my god, the rook, and yeah, it's the worst thing, and it's crazy because, like Anna said, Daniel Negreanu moving this g-pawn early in the game might actually prove to be the difference maker, and it did. The entire back rank cleared, and this g-pawn was the difference. Even if black could go king f7, it's still very difficult because white just has too much firepower with the queen, but what an epic set of games. Both players have so much to learn. For Daniel, he has the Alpin Sicilian that he can now prepare against with the black pieces. If you need an opening with the white pieces versus the Sicilian, the Alpin is great. Here we've got the Scandinavian. With white, I really just like a solid approach with bishop e2 and castles with d4, but Rubius played super creatively. Always be on the lookout for these obscure pawn building blocks and try to punish f6 early. Just put that pawn in the center. You gotta be first to the center of the board, because otherwise your opponent will be. And as this game developed, super complicated game. Restricting pawn play by black. Look at this. Not allowing, with c5, not allowing any movement, and then the key pawn break, and perhaps the most important and instructive moment of the game, pawn play. Using them as barriers, using them as restricting mechanisms for the opponent. There's so much there, the same side attacking concepts, and how Daniel, has got to be careful, not try to do this again, it might backfire. And then this piece activation concept, the knight move to activate two pieces. How can I add another attacker to the game, not just with pawn moves? So much to learn, but ultimately, It's Daniel Negreanu who wins 2-0. So congratulations to him. He is the Group B leader. We had another matchup earlier today. Benji Fishy going up 2-0, winning his match, I should say, 2-0 against Neeko. And the big match of the day was canceled. XQC versus Pokimane, because XQC is in this crazy situation in Texas. If any of you are watching from Texas or other parts of the United States affected with no power, I know Carrie, my graphics designer, for most of my thumbnails, is also suffering. So listen, I'm wishing you all the best. Please stay warm, stay healthy, hydrated. It's a crazy, crazy world we're living in, hasn't it? I mean, hasn't it been just completely mad since the beginning of 2020? So try to stay positive. Hopefully my videos could be a little bit of a reprieve for you, and I look forward to catching you in the next PogChamps recap.